Hey everyone, welcome back to Patreon, and as you know, this week we're talking about quartals. Quartals in major and in minor, and possibly over an altered dominant. So a basic explanation of what quartals are basically a stack of some sort of fourth intervals. So it could be perfect fourths, like this, and it could be three of them, or four, like that would be considered chordal voicings, right? But it can also include altered fourths. So this could be like a sharp four. So basically having a sharp four chordal interval, that naturally comes about when we go through a scale and we come across a fourth interval that isn't a perfect fourth, but it might be a sharp four. But it's still considered a chordal because of the interval. And it has a specific sound. It has this really open sound, right? So when we play this, you have those stacked fourths and it feels very open, right? And this was a very classic sound in a lot of modal music because it works really well with the modes. And if we go up, say in a scale, this is also considered a chordal voicing, but in this case, we have that sharp four as one of the intervals, but it all still kind of counts as chordal intervals, right? So that's basically what we're going to get into today. One of the easiest ways to start, right? We take major. Now, of course, you can go through chordal intervals in a diatonic way, but not all of these sound good. So here's what I mean. The first chordal interval based just diatonically on a major scale, so we'll take C major. You have C, F, B. Now, these notes don't make sense together. If you had F, B, and D or something, you know, that could be part of like a G7, it could be part of a D diminished, but with C, it doesn't really make sense. You want that F to be E, right? So this as a chordal doesn't really work. So we want chordals that make the major sound really cool and interesting, and don't give us that clash sonically that we get from these intervals where we're not really supposed to have a four with major in a chord, at least. Or if you do, you voice it so that you have the third on top. That's a topic for another time. But there are other chordals within that sound really good. So the next one being what we get if you move up from this C, F, B, you get D, G, C, right? This is great. This is great if you have a C major 9 chord. So it's a nice voicing. And then the next one up is also a really good one. So this is just E, A, and D, right? These are all perfect fourths, actually. So this is an example of that. So that sound might be familiar to you already. It's commonly used in modal music, right? So this is perfect over C major. You get that really angular kind of sound. So, and it's also great for voicings, right? And in this case, we get this C6-9 sound that's really beautiful, right? So maybe if you're playing a true C major 7, you know, that's going to bring out that 6-9 sound more than that C major sound you're going to get. So you might notice that a lot of chordals kind of pick up on a pentatonic sound, and that's also how we draw the parallel to minor. But you could technically also have a chordal of this, where you have F, B, and E. Now this is something that it's not very diagnostic of C major either, but it is within the scale. So you might kind of need to use it as a point of resolution, but it can be used as a chordal. There's other chordals that you can get from this, say like, you know, G and C and F, But this, again, not very diagnostic of C major 7, right? This would be more appropriate over, say, your G sus chord, right? But it shares a lot of similar notes with C major, so it makes sense. But that still is getting across that C major sound. And then, of course, we've got A, D, and G. This is, well, we've got A, D, and G, and we've got also B, E, and A, which are basically sharing notes with those first two chordals that we talked about that have that really beautiful major 6-9 sound. So in this case, we have the 6, we've got the 9, we've got the 5, and then this one we have actually major 7 and 3rd and 6. So this is actually really good over C major itself. Yeah, so that's like a really cool sound. And yeah, so I would say the biggest thing to take away from this is if you want to really bring out that 6-9 sound, you want to take the chordals, which are all just perfect fourths in this case, on the 2nd and 3rd scale degrees, and then you can also take the ones on the 4th and 5th, maybe to outline sus chord or 7th chord relative to the major, so in this case G7, G7 sus. And then those last two, so we have the chordal on the 6 and the 7. Yeah, again, that's a sort of a major 13 and another 6-9 kind of sound. So you can yeah, so again, it's not perfectly diagnostic in the way that, a true like bebop line would be, but that's why this is part of that modal era where we kind of get a more angular approach to chords rather than just outlining, the perfect chord tones, right? So when we go to minor, obviously there are parallels between major and minor. When we look at this pentatonic scale that was sort of a part of C major, we can also acknowledge that this is the same as the A minor pentatonic, right? The reason why they're so closely linked is because you can use the same chordals over them, but they might just be starting on a different relative note in the scale. So in this case, another thing to note is that a lot of these chordals that work really well come actually from the hexatonic scale rather than just pentatonic. So hexatonic is pentatonic plus one more, it's 6 notes, right, rather than 7. So we have in major 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. So we just basically leave out this 4, and you get all of these chordals based on these 6 notes, and that's how we get. And basically, a hexatonic scale is comprised of 2 different triads. So in this case, when we have the 2 chords that comprise this hexatonic scale in C major is the G major triad and the A minor triad. So we get all of those notes from these 2 triads as they are related to C major, and that's built on the 5 and the 6. So when we go to A minor, right, the relative minor, and we have that pentatonic scale, which is the same as C major pentatonic but starting on A, the A minor hexatonic scale also uses the G major and A minor triad. So in this case, instead of it being relative to C major, the 5 and the 6, we have relative to A minor, the flat 7 and the root. So actually those 4 chordals that we were using work just as well over A minor as well. That's that chordal sound that we get out of those 2 scales that are very similar. You can get more of that angular modal sound by just playing around with those sort of subsequent triads. do the chordals to kind of get more of an open sound versus a triadic sound. Yeah, and then there are some other chordals that can be derived from minor besides just the hexatonic and pentatonic. So let's take Dorian. So we know that we have the A, we have the A chordals, right? A, D, G, and we have B, E, A. And then when we get actually to the one starting on C, we get a really cool chordal that you can use on minor. We get C and F sharp and B. And this actually doesn't clash. So but it is a very interesting sound. It's a very particular sound. You get that minor sound with the natural 6. And you also get it with the 9. So it also sounds good when you add the fourth note of the chordal. So you have C, you have F sharp, you got B, and then you can add E. I think that's a really cool sound. That's great for comping. You can do it again. You get D, G, and C. This is again derived from the hexatonic. Right. And then if you wanted to add a fourth on the top of D and G and C, you get this F sharp, which sounds cool, but you just have to be careful again of that very particular F sharp natural 6 sound. So we also have E, A, D, G. Again, all derived from that hexatonic, right? We also had this in C major. So this is, going off of that, what we had from that hexatonic scale. And yeah, those are all the sort of great chordal options over these chords. And then the final part when we get into altered dominant. So the way that we're dealing with it when it comes to altered dominant chords is we're dealing only with the pentatonic and not the hexatonic, because we start running into certain clashes from that scale. It doesn't totally adapt when it comes to altered. But the pentatonic scale does. Basically, you're finding the pentatonic scale that's a tritone away from the root of your altered dominant chord. So say in this case we've been using this C major pentatonic, it would work over a G flat 7 altered. You would have a sharp 9, a flat 9, and a sharp 5 at the very least. So if we have, let me play like a voicing for this, you can basically use all of those notes on your you can use all of those notes on that chord. You basically use the pentatonic scale that's a tritone away from the root of your dominant altered. To give another example, if say our altered dominant chord was on C7, so say we had C7, sharp 9, sharp 5, right? We would be taking chordals from F sharp pentatonic. So, and remember we have the one on the 2nd scale degree and the 3rd scale degree. And then we also have the one that's built from the 6th. We're taking out the one built from the 7th because we're not using hexatonic. So you can use any of those. Yeah, anyways, hope you try some of this in your improvisation. Hope you use it over comping. You can use it in any which way you would like, and let me know how this helps or changes your playing at all. All right, see you next week.